Porkins Policy Radio, offering a unique perspective on everything. Geopolitics, culture creation, the reality of the world we live in. Coming to you live from New York City, your host, Pierce Redmond.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Porkins Policy Radio. As always, I'm your host, Pierce Redmond, and you can hear this show here at American Freedom Radio, AmericanFreedomRadio.com, as well as on my website, PorkinsPolicyReview.com. And if you're new to the show, there are many ways to listen, both here at AFR, on my website, on iTunes, YouTube, and hopefully a few more various podcatchers in the very near future. But before we get to today's episode, just a few things I wanted to get out of the way. An update on the issues of the Journal. I am so sorry that I haven't sent them out yet. I've just been a little stressed out with work and things, and I now finally have all of the journals together. So I will be contacting people for shipping and handling money very soon. Probably not this week, if I'm being totally honest, but next week. And hopefully I'll start sending them out. I've already sent out a few here and there, including to my guest, Tom Secker. And also just very quickly, just wanted to mention that tomorrow is the 22nd anniversary of the Oklahoma City bombing. And I know that I have mentioned on the show about talking with Wendy Painting, who's the author of Aberration in the Heartland of the Real. And I'm trying to get her on the show, so hopefully in a few weeks we'll be able to do an OKC anniversary show. And we might even bring up the OKC bombing in this discussion, because Tom and I are going to be discussing the season finale of Homeland, Season 6. Lots of material to get to. But first, Tom, how are you?
Yeah, I'm great, Pierce. I mean, thanks for having me back on, and looking forward to talking about Homeland again. This has been, as I said to a friend earlier this evening, watching this season of Homeland is a bit like reading a report from the Rand Corporation. It's utterly fascinating, but also kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Well, so for people keeping track at home, Tom and I are going to be discussing really the last two episodes, R for Romeo and America First. Again, great titles this year. They really, I don't know. This is really my favorite season. So we're going to be discussing those two and some of the big sort of ideas that are brought up. But first, Tom, what did you make of the last two episodes? And where the series end? Do you like it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed this one. I don't know about my favorite. I think it was probably the best in terms of the best crafted season that, in fact, that they've ever done. I was going to say since season 1, but no, I actually think it's probably the best crafted one that they've ever put together, because Homeland has this thing, we've discussed this in our talks about previous seasons, where they set up a load of spinning plates in the first 2 or 3 episodes, and you're not sure, which is going to hit the ground first and how all this is going to come together. In this season, it was virtually seamless. There was only really one episode, the one where it was really focused around Carrie and the custody of her daughter and the hearings in court, and I found all that dragged a bit, and I wasn't really sure why they needed so much of that. Why that seemed a bit like a filler episode, but every other episode has been kind of a roller coaster in terms of emotional engagement, in terms of drama. But yeah, just like I say, a kind of seamless progression from the opening with Sekou Ba, who by this point has been virtually forgotten. He's no longer
I know.
the bombing is no longer really relevant to the story. It's just part of the context and the backdrop to what they then find out. But that transition was handled almost flawlessly. And yeah, the last 2 episodes, I think the 11th episode, possibly the best episode of Homeland ever.
Yeah. That was in my notes.
The confrontation between O'Keefe and the president-elect was magical. One of the best scenes of TV I've seen in a good while. And yeah, the last episode, as always with Homeland, the 11th episode's better, and the 12th episode is kind of
falls flat.
It's like an echo of the real drama in the previous one. So, nonetheless, it was exciting enough. It was well executed. The whole thing with the, spoilers, with the assassination of the president-elect, very well handled, very well executed. So,
yeah.
And I did like the way it ended with Dara Dahl in prison.
That was great. Although I was kind of bummed out. I don't know. I kind of felt bad for him. He's slowly through this season grown on me. Even though this season really kind of illustrates how corrupt and horrible Dar is. Oddly enough, this season I think especially humanized him a lot more. And he along with Astrid is the only other person that actually cares about Quinn. And I thought it was kind of sweet that he asked Max to help him, and he doesn't want Quinn to be the scapegoat or the patsy for this assassination plot. He even calls Carrie and tries to avert this. Even Dar is like, well, we don't have to kill the president. This is going a little bit too far. But there was something sweet about, again, who for all intents and purposes is a monster and had some manipulative sexual relationship with Quinn when he was 16. Yet he's like one of the few people that's genuinely looking out for him. So I don't know, with all of that in mind, seeing Dar in prison with a beard, I kind of felt bad for him a little bit. But obviously he's an evil character. I think I just love F. Murray Abraham. I think this is like a role he was born to play. And it's probably the highlight of his career as well. I'm sure he loves playing it. I mean, what a part. Yeah, exactly.
As an actor, you're like, this is going to be a lot of fun playing Dara Dahl.
Oh, and it seems like, as an actor, it's like this character, this part that you can basically just make up we don't really know anything about Dar's backstory. So, it just sort of there's so many possibilities. And I think those sorts of characters are great for actors because they can kind of just balls to the wall, do whatever they want with it, and they craft. Mm-hmm. That's why Dar is so good. Even when he, these little lines where they're sort of hinting at his background, they're like filled with so many crazy images and things. So, I think it works great for that.
His transition it's in the 11th episode, isn't it? Where they capture Max, who has, he's the mole inside the sock puppet InfoWar corporation. I don't even know what we call that entity that's in that basement in that building. But they capture him. Dara Dahl sort of not tortures him, but assaults him quite naturally. Yeah. But by the end of the episode, he and Max they've joined forces to try and protect Quinn and ultimately interrupt this plot against the president. And that transition, am I right? Does that all take place in that one episode?
Yes, I think so.
Or at least that transition. That kind of sums up Dara Dahl the whole season, is that right up until that point, he's this evil, Machiavellian, vicious, kind of amoral, almost sociopath. But deep down, he does care about some people. And whenever someone actually does care about someone, that does humanize them. And it does make you realize beneath all the layers, there is a human being there. It's just very, very well disguised because of all the horrible shit that he spent his life doing. But like you say, we don't even know what most of this is. We're left to kind of imagine it. It's all in the, it's in the eyes and in the inflection of the voice. You just get the sense that this is a man who's kind of been everywhere and done everything imaginable in the world of black operations. So, yeah, fantastic acting. And I know what you mean. At the end, I did feel a little pang of, I hope he gets out of prison, basically.
Definitely.
There's got to be some kind of prison break situation at the start of the next season.
Well, very, CIA is great at that. What's his, the Liberian president? What's his name? Anyway, it doesn't matter.
I know what you mean, but I can't remember his name.
Anyway, totally off topic. Let's dive a little bit into some of the things that kind of jumped out in the last two episodes, because there's some really like amazing, again, like amazing Homeland-esque stuff in there that only a show like Homeland could do. And I was saying to you, Niz, like a few weeks ago, that there's all these sort of negative articles out there about Homeland, like, oh, it doesn't, it's stupid and it's trying too hard to predict things and it doesn't work and, look, the president is all wrong and it blah, blah, blah. And I thought these were kind of crazy because there's so much in these that, like, I think it's upsetting to a lot of people in the, critics or whatever, because it is sort of, again, it's like, yeah, the president is Hillary Clinton, but she still also is kind of Donald Trump. And there are a few things where, I don't know what show they were watching, but Homeland is really good at predicting things. I mean, we get O'Keefe says he's one of the deplorables, or he makes some sort of mention that, well, she called me deplorable. Just like, again, when were they writing this? We get the whole lock her up chant, or not my president, outside of, again, what is ostensibly Trump Tower. She's in New York, she's in this big office building. Again, all those like ideas are kind of there for you. It's not that they don't have to make sense given that we have Donald Trump as president. They make sense just in eliciting an emotional response. Mm-hmm. We get like explicit finally mention of the deep state, the quote unquote deep state in both of these in the last two episodes. Well, before we kind of get there, because I want to kind of pick your brain on some of that. What did you make of the Office of Policy Coordination name drop in this last two episodes?
Well, that is presumably the name for. This is so typical of black operations. What does the Office of Policy Coordination actually refer to in that episode? Does it mean that office in the basement where they're running all these sock puppet accounts on the internet? Or is it like the overseeing office for that and the black ops team that's in the house elsewhere in the kind of secondary plot that's been, well, it kind of builds into the main plot ultimately, but it's been a secondary plot for the last couple of episodes before these two. Who is the Office of Policy Coordination? Well,
historically.
Historically, there was an Office of Policy Coordination, and this was, again, somewhat ambiguous. It sort of had a role in violent black operations, but also psychological warfare. It was supposed to be primarily focused overseas, but did have quite a lot of a domestic role. It does somewhat connect up with the whole Animal Farm, George Orwell, CIA thing going on in the 50s. And most of that first generation of big senior CIA black ops people either worked for the Office of Policy Coordination or moved through it as part of their, rise up the ranks. So it was also kind of like a finishing school for all those OSS graduates that then became the first generation of CIA bigwigs. So the name drop, I mean, they obviously know who they're referring to there. I find that a little odd because it's a CIA thing, and the CIA have been so absent from this season. They haven't really been referred to much in the dialogue. But there again, would most people pick up on that? Would most people hear Office of Policy Coordination and think black operations and intelligence? I mean, it sounds like some White House think tank that's trying to marry together its educational and economic and energy policies all in one match or something. Something like that.
Right.
It's so banal sounding. So apart from for people like us who'd go, hang on, what did they just say? Most people I don't think would pick up on that it's a CIA thing, that it's a reference to them. So again, are they kind of teasing us a little bit with that, saying, ultimately the CIA are kind of the operational arm of the deep state? Or is even that a simplification? Yeah. And is the deliberate ambiguity in what this office is in the program a reflection of the ambiguity of, well, what is the deep state ultimately? I mean, it's this. We can point to these things in this show and say, in as much as these things exist for real, they are the deep state. But you can't just draw a circle around it and say it is that and it certainly isn't all of these other things. So I guess they're kind of playing around with that ambiguity.
Which they seem to have been doing this whole season. Kind of playing around with terms, ideas, events. You know, I mean, again, it seems like it was so long ago, but the beginning of the season and the beginning of our conversations on this, you know, was all about, we thought, oh, this is gonna they're gonna rebrand Al-Qaeda. You know, and they're sort of playing around with the history of Al-Qaeda and those things, and then that seems to be no, that's not really the focus. So yeah, I mean, this is like a season of that. Oddly enough, again, too, you know, the Office of Policy Coordination, obviously direct reference to the CIA, which, as you say, has been kind of absent this season. Then we get this really, Saul, this sort of amazingly simple description of the situation where he says this is a CIA coup. This is what we did he says, Nicaragua, Chile, Congo, all the way back to Iran, which is like, wow, you know, why make that analogy? You know, he's talking to President Keane and he's saying, you know, well, they've got, you know, there's protesters outside and, he's got, you know, they're controlling the media narrative, you know, all these things. It's building up to what we've done in Iran, you know, which is like, I guess it's funny for him to bring it up because that's sort of what this whole coup against the president is all about. That she's going to be too soft on Iran or something. So, what did you make of that, Tom? Because again, it's like, one, that, you know, this is sort of what Trump and his nuts, the Trump nuts have been screaming about every day. This is all a CIA coup against Donald's, you know? What the hell again, I can't quite place where they're going with this. It's such a, because it's so obvious when Saul kind of lays it all out there. I mean, what did you make of that? What do you think they're trying to say with that?
Well, as always, there's kind of several different layers to pick away here. Firstly, Saul would see it like that because he is a CIA man through and through. So he would identify this is a CIA coup. But let's face it, this is how any intelligence agency performs coups. And it isn't just the CIA who do that. It's also how private entities perform coups. If you read Confessions of an Economic Hitman, for example, he details examples where effectively private corporations have done this without an intelligence agency actually running things on the ground. Now, with Iran, there again, you have a mixed example because that was primarily motivated by oil, right?
Yeah.
That Mossadegh nationalized the oil fields that, at least on paper, belonged to, I can't remember what they were called, but they're now British Petroleum. And they approached MI6, and MI6 approached the CIA, and between these three parties, they conjured up this coup to get rid of Mossadegh. So that was not just a CIA coup, that was a deep state coup, right? In the most kind of classical sense of
literal
the term.
sense, yeah.
Yeah. If you want a textbook example of how the deep state, not just the CIA, do it, and that's what I mean by the CIA being the operational arm of the deep state, is that it's not like the CIA just decided we're going to overthrow Mossadegh. They had a reason for this. Someone approached them and basically asked them to do it. So they're like, you know, the foot soldiers of well, not necessarily the foot soldiers. I suppose the foot soldiers would be the various people actually in Iran protesting and blowing things up and causing chaos and the rest of it. But they're like the middle managers for the deep state to carry out their aims and ambitions. But there again, we've been given several different terms in this season, because there's another point where Daradal says to the president-elect, you don't want to go to war with your own national security establishment. Now, the national security establishment isn't the same thing as the deep state, right? The national security establishment is all government.
NSA, FBI, you know.
And I guess you could argue the weapons manufacturers and the other private interests directly connected to the security intelligence agencies. But you wouldn't necessarily count an oil company in that. But yet big oil is definitely part of the deep state. In fact, a lot of people would argue that's one of the parts of the deep state that's actually behind Donald Trump. So you see what I mean? It's a much more complex and ambiguous and probably multiform entity. It's not just this one thing. And I think Homeland has done very well at showing, like, to a CIA person and to someone interpreting this from a perspective of knowing the CIA's history, they would see this in the program as a CIA coup. But that isn't what it is. Or it isn't just that. It's kind of that and 6 other things at the same time. So when Saul says that, I think it's relationship with the agency. There's another point where he says it's, you know, this isn't my CIA. You know, this isn't the CIA I joined. I'm thinking, yeah, but if you knew that this is what the CIA did in Iran and Congo and all the rest of these places, then it is the CIA that you joined. So
this isn't the CIA in my childhood, you know?
Yeah. This isn't the CIA of Mission Impossible back in the 70s.
Right.
Yeah. So, like I say, there's a bunch of different things going on in that little statement, and it is one of those points along the road where they've characterized this struggle that they're representing in 6 or 7 different ways, with 6 or 7 different terms, which all overlap to some extent. Don't get me wrong. It's not like the CIA and the deep state are separate, but it's not like they're one and the same thing either. There is, I don't want to use the term grey area because that's not really what I mean. I guess I mean that it's a looser association than that. There are very much people within the CIA who are loyal to massive private corporate interests and are also loyal to the kind of overall governmental agenda of centralized authority. And both of those things are kind of critical to the deep state and very much characterize it, all parts of it, in, you know, regardless of what sort of ideological affinity or whatever different parts of it might have. They're all ultimately loyal to that. So, yeah, it has done very, very well at reflecting the complexities of trying to describe how the establishment, how deep political power actually operates, and how we even talk about it. Being run by the Office of Policy Coordination, which is all about just inflaming people and getting all people pissed off with random slogans and memes and, you know, someone punched someone in the face and that's got to mean this and that and the other. No, it doesn't. It means this, that and the other. What they've actually done is set against that a very complex and subtle discussion of what we're calling the deep state, but also how we define those things and how we understand its operations. And that is something I can't ever remember a television show ever doing before. So from purely like an intellectual, creative perspective, they've been very, very ambitious, and I think they've pulled it off. From a political perspective, I actually think you could learn a lot by watching this. I'm not saying, you know, take it all in and believe it all, because there's got to be some stuff in there that's actually malevolent. But as a kind of dramatic lecture series on how politics really works, there isn't anything better. Or not recently. We was talking just before we came on air about the British House of Cards and how well that represents the British establishment. And yeah, if you want to understand the British establishment, I'd say watch that. You'll learn a lot. And if you want to understand the American establishment, you could do a lot worse than watching Homeland.
Yeah. Well, and on, again, kind of going off what you were saying there, in that they very cleverly, created a show that is telling us a fair amount of truth as to how these things operate and happen. And again, Homeland with this uncanny ability to write scripts months before events happen, or certainly the climate that Homeland has created in this season is the climate that we're in right now. And I think critics just don't want to admit that.
Well, to go back to your point on that, I think it's because they were hoping Homeland would sit on one side of the fence or the other.
Yeah.
That they would somehow have a Trump figure as president that they were laying into, or vice versa, or
the great savior Hillary Clinton.
Well, or whatever loyalty or what that they could have chosen, that they would pick one and stick with it, because that's how, because the political dialogue in our world, in both your country and mine, is so kind of fractured and polarized, and you've got all these different separate groups, and they're all pretty hostile towards one another. I think critics feel some obligation to sort of be loyal to one of those groups or another, or one of those agendas. Yeah. And because Homeland just came along and said, fuck you, we're just gonna, take an almost omniscient view of this entire political landscape, and that's going to be the setting for our season. I think it meant that a lot of people didn't get that kind of emotional satisfaction of, that's the hero, and they belong to my part of the political spectrum, and all of that. So in the absence of anything even approaching that in this season, critics didn't have that, they didn't get that political buzz out of it. Whereas I got more buzz out of this politically than any season of Homeland up until this point. So I guess there is something to be said for those of us who aren't all that ideologically affiliated at all. We actually want to have a conversation like this. So this is actually kind of a good thing. And I know we keep saying this. I hate saying this about Homeland and hate giving them this kind of credit. But this is why we keep talking about this show. It is a piece of propaganda, but it's one of the most finely crafted and intelligent and provocative bits of propaganda ever made. So
I know there's some little shit commented on, I think our last episode on Homeland. It was like, stop promoting this corporatist propaganda. And it's like, okay, I understand where you're coming from. But there's a lot to be gained out of watching this. And, I say this to people all the time. They ask me, but isn't it kind of like, very, very one-sided and biased? And I say, yeah, of course it is. It is the CIA's television show. But that, putting your head in the sand and ignoring it isn't going to help. And again, playing off of what we were saying, we have to, we have to talk about this because we have Dar and Max figure out that Brett O'Keefe is running his own operation. Apparently, Dar is sort of out of the loop when it comes to this. And this is really the whole sort of, he sort of gets a little bit of a thread involving Quinn and something that O'Keefe is doing. And this is a small thread into the bigger sort of rope that is the coup against the president, the assassination attempt. But we have, cause Tom, I gotta get your opinion on this. We've got them discovering that there's a fake Quinn posting on conspiracy sites talking about the deep state, and this is orchestrated by basically Alex Jones and the deep state in order to help assassinate the president. I'm not sure if this is irony or satire or what, but it is something. And it is alarming. Again, you said it at the very beginning of the episode, this has been a very enjoyable season, but it's also a quite disturbing season. Again, are they coming out and telling us this is what's going on? That a lot of this, because this just sort of instantly made me, of course, my mind jumps to things like Pizzagate, or just the way that the term deep state has gone from something that people like us have used occasionally to, Anderson Cooper has to talk about it on CNN now. And, anytime, Donald Trump, stubs his toe, the deep state was behind it. But really, what I got out of this is Homeland saying that this is an operation. That, so many people are talking about this because there's a lot of fake accounts out there promoting something, talking about these things. He says conspiracy sites. And the fact that it's O'Keefe/Jones that's running the operation. I don't know. What did you make of this, Tom?
I think the parallel between O'Keefe and Jones, it's kind of so obvious that they're probably selling as a bit of a dummy there. O'Keefe doesn't represent Jones as such.
No.
I mean, for one thing, he doesn't look at all like him, and they could have easily made him look more like him. They could have cut his hair short and, bulked him up a bit or something. Right. In fact, he looks a bit like Jeff Rentz.
Yeah, he does, actually.
Not massively, but there's a touch of that there.
That's interesting.
So I think he represents the conspiracy media, the kind of online conspiracy media in general. He does also represent Jones because he's playing as Alex Jones. Yeah. But that's kind of really obvious and in your face. And I think that's partly a bit of a distraction maybe, or at least a simplification. That's one element of what they're doing with that character. But I think they are treating him as a metaphor or analogy for the conspiracy media in general, which itself is becoming less and less a conspiracy media and more a sectarian right-wing political media. So, and they play on that very well. This isn't a guy who spends most of his time talking about whatever government conspiracies. That only really comes in when he's playing the victim card and making out that the president-elect is, going to shut down his voice and they're going to lock us all up because they can't deal with us and, all this kind of stuff. But up until that point, he is basically just a political commentator. He may as well be Glenn Beck.
Sure.
So they're kind of playing on that whole spectrum of media, or that whole part of the spectrum of media, which has, all kind of merged together now. That you have kind of hard conservative commentators bringing in conspiracy elements from the conspiracy media, and you have the conspiracy media very much bringing in elements of the hard conservative or alt-right or, other parts of that bit of the political spectrum. And it has all kind of merged into one blob. And I think that's what O'Keefe ultimately represents. So I don't think they're saying anything as simple as Alex Jones is working for the Office of Policy Coordination. I think they're saying the conspiracy media has been for some time and is being manipulated by the Office of Policy Coordination, i.e. the CIA or similar. Why they would be admitting that? Well,
yeah,
let me bring in a couple of other things that I've watched in recent years, just to kind of flesh this out a bit. 2013, we got those two movies, White House Down and Olympus Has Fallen, both of which depict attacks on the president, on the presidency, on the White House. In particular, White House Down, which is the Roland Emmerich one, that was one of their consultants who worked on that was Rich Klein. Now, if people don't know who Rich Klein is, Richard Klein, look him up on IMDb and elsewhere. He is a former State Department and White House official turned inside the DC Beltway lawyer who for some reason is now a liaison to the entertainment industry, even though by his own confession he's not a movie guy. So what on earth he's really up to, I don't know. But in that one, it turns out that it's an inside job. The attack on the White House is being orchestrated by the Speaker of the House and the military-industrial complex. And funnily enough, that was the one that got turned down for Pentagon support. Now, fast forward 2-3 years. Last year, we got the series Designated Survivor, which is where there is a massive attack on the Congress during the State of the Union. So it kills everyone. Supreme Court, most of the Congress, basically the whole executive branch of the government and quite a lot of the other two bits of the government all get massacred in this gigantic, spectacular explosion. It's great. And of course there is a designated survivor. They pick one guy and he goes and stays in a hotel during this so that if something does happen, God forbid, there is someone left to still run the country. So he takes over as president. And as it emerges throughout the 12 or so episodes of the first season, there is some kind of deep state behind all of this. Obviously, it gets blamed on Islamic terrorists, blah, blah, blah. It turns out that wasn't what happened, and that someone has made someone else, a young congressman, deliberately survive the explosion, but he gets kind of dug out of the rubble, so everyone thinks he's a victim and therefore a hero. And that he's being set up to take over the presidency. And in the very last episode of that season, someone shoots at the president and we don't see what happens. And that's the cliffhanger for season 2, is does the president actually get killed? That series is also co-produced by Rich Klein. So we have, if you like, the cinema, or at least the entertainment of the inside job. Very much coming into like big budget blockbuster cinema lately, that it's not just like conspiracy theories about UFOs or whatever. You know, the standard conspiracy culture that's also been mainstream culture since at least the 70s. But this kind of stuff, the kind of stuff that we're now seeing in this season of Homeland, which has taken it to greater extremes than either White House Down or Designated Survivor managed, because neither of those are anywhere near as intelligently made or well crafted. But nonetheless, it's the same themes and the same ideas. So we are starting to be given this, and given this by people, if you like, who should know better.
Yeah.
The CIA should know better than to start washing their dirty laundry in public via the medium of Homeland. People like Rich Klein should not be washing their dirty laundry in public via similar films and TV shows. So what on earth are they up to? And I do wonder, going back to something we discussed in the CIA and Hollywood, in several of the episodes that we did, we were looking at films that effectively glorified black operations in some way. And not just in the generic sense where it's, oh, you know, they've got cool spy gadgetry and they kill the bad guy and save the world. But the kind of the ugly stuff. If you look at The Good Shepherd or the Animal Farm adaptation, they're very much promoting the notion of CIA-caused revolutions, synthetic coups and so on. And so I wonder, is this just kind of an extension of that? And are they actually taking quite a considerable risk in saying this also happens at home? Because in all those other ones, it's happening in some foreign country. The idea that the CIA overthrew the government of Cuba or Iran or something, people don't care as much. And I can understand, of course. I care more if MI5 overthrows the government in this country than if they overthrow the government of Somalia. I'm not trying to be nasty. I just, you know, I live here. So of course it affects people all the more emotionally and therefore is more politically risky to do. And I do wonder, like I say, is it an extension of that kind of propaganda aim to gradually glorify and normalize and kind of take the extremism out of it? Because we're living in times of where everyone's getting accused of being an extremist, right? You're either some, you know, liberal extremist who wants to punch Nazis, or you're a Nazi who wants to punch liberals. Everyone is supposedly now a violent extremist.
Everyone's capable.
Yeah, everyone's, you know, could be like that. You could be one of them. So, who wins in that? Well, as we see in Homeland, ultimately, the security state. Because at the very end, again, spoilers, the president-elect has survived the assassination attempt, largely thanks to Quinn, who, despite being half dead and being killed twice already, is still alive, and manages to save the president and Carrie all in one.
Yes.
Bless him. I mean, Quinn, like, you know, superhero.
Yes. And they're still sort of, like, vague on if they're definitely, like, leaving a possibility open for him to return.
Even though he was shot to pieces.
Yeah.
But then again, they killed him at the end of last season, so
right.
You never know.
Who knows?
Maybe they'll bring him back as a ghost.
Right.
Well, they did bring, what's his name? Brody back as a hallucination, so, you know. But, yeah, so the president-elect survives, and when she actually takes over as president, she basically instigates this massive crackdown and takes her revenge, and she locks up Dara Dahl, and right at the end we even see she locks up Saul.
Yeah.
Why? Because she's kind of gone overboard at that point, and she's just like, just lock them all up.
And she blocks Carrie out, you know, she won't let Carrie in. We just see that shot of the president kind of looking sad, but also like, this is what I'm gonna do. You know, this is my role as president, is, you know, to completely crack down on everybody, basically.
So again, who wins in this situation? Well, not the particular group of people who were staging the coup. Obviously, they're now all dead or locked up. But the authority of the state, the rationale for centralized authority and power, and ultimately the rationale for the security state and the expansion and aggressiveness of the security state have all been reaffirmed by this. And so, in a way, by some part of the deep state staging this coup against her, they've actually re-strengthened their own power when it all shakes down, because she has now had to compromise on everything that they didn't like about her in order to defend herself against them. So, you know,
well, and also,
like when you fight your enemy, you become your enemy.
Yes.
And so, like I say, by washing all of this dirty laundry in public, are they in fact reaffirming their own power and saying, it doesn't really matter. We can stage a coup, fail, but what will ultimately come out of that is a reaffirmation of everything we believe in and want. And therefore, at least if you're playing that kind of political game, you can't win. There is no winning. And then I wonder, you look at when this last episode aired, and it aired right in the middle of Trump's final transition from, you could just about try and defend that notion that he was anti-establishment up until that point. And then he starts bombing Syria and Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And everyone realizes, oh no, he's the same kind of neocon shitbag we would have got if Hillary had got elected. So just at the point that, like, the final hope of something from the Trump presidency was vanquished, was wiped out, we got an episode of Homeland where the final part, final moments of that president looking like she could be a good president were wiped out. And it happened at the same fucking time. And you've got to think that's either a masterpiece of scheduling or they had some idea of how long it would take Trump to be turned around and to just abandon everything, at least, you know, libertarian, anti-war or anti-establishment that he said in the run-up to the election. Because that has all gone now. That's all been jettisoned.
Completely.
Just as in Homeland, the president has jettisoned everything that got her elected. So the fact that they reflected each other so well is eerie in the extreme, but also I think cuts to the heart of why this show is important, but why this kind of discussion about politics is important. Because Trump has been smacked around the head with this Russia thing pretty much since he got elected. As soon as he starts bombing the Middle East, that has gone.
Yeah,
no one's talked about Russiagate in the last week. No one cares anymore.
All the people connected to that, it doesn't matter. Paul Manafort, those, whatever. Who cares?
So you got to wonder, was the purpose of that? And people have been saying this even in some quite mainstream articles. Was the purpose of Russiagate simply to either bash Trump, the Trump administration, into a neocon foreign policy, or to kind of give them an excuse? It's like, we're going to keep hitting you with this, so you've got to respond by cracking down on Syria and not just letting Putin get what he wants in Syria, and that'll prove that you're not on his side. And they're like, well, we were kind of thinking of doing that anyway. This now gives us the political excuse and capital in order to do it. We're now getting something for this domestically. We've now got rid of a problem of this accusation about, peeing on Russian prostitutes or whatever it was. So the dialogue has completely changed. And like I say, the coinciding of that last episode with this final, the last throes of hope of the Trump presidency, I can't think it's a coincidence as such. There's got to be some thinking behind that. I don't know quite what they were going for, but there is some kind of strategic thinking behind that they thought it'll roughly take that long. So if we schedule the last episode for that week, that's pretty much when we think Trump will finally give up and just become another neocon.
Oh, I mean, it could have just been as simple as, okay, well, this is when we're going to have our proxy force gas a bunch of people, get the YouTube video up quickly, send it to Ivanka, who will watch it and cry, and then, go to Daddy and tell him we got to bomb this country, and then, Sunday we'll premiere the final episode. That's a very simplistic way.
It's mostly planned. No, I know what you're driving at. I'm just saying, you look at that thing, you think that's not a coincidence, surely.
It can't be. It can't. And I think it's, you know what I think it is? It's, as you're saying, the inevitability of eventually this piece of shit is going to break and we're going to get what we want. And apparently it took less than 100 days. I don't know, it was 80 something days to do it. But, you know, they were going to get, so even if this happened, you know, if, let's say we go back in time and Trump doesn't bomb Syria and it happens 4 weeks from now. Okay, not quite the same impact. But still, you know, you can see the parallels with Homeland that given a big enough problem that's essentially caused by this nefarious network of national security officials, you can make the president completely reverse everything, and as you said, strengthen the very group that she's supposedly fighting against. You know, that's the other thing too with Homeland, with Keane. Okay, cool, you're locking up all of these intelligence officials and whatnot, but the guys that are still around, you know, the people that were smart enough to kind of keep their head down and they knew something but they didn't say, you know, the social climbers, those are sometimes even worse, you know? Yep. Those nameless officials at the CIA that have been around for 30 years and up to no good, but they've kind of kept quiet, they're going to sort of climb up and take the mantle. I mean, it's like you said, I mean, this organization, this I hate saying deep state, but the deep state will always exist. And, you know, when you were talking before, Tom, I just popped in my head, I mean, the house always wins. It's
or
inevitable.
If you go to their casino, the house always wins. Exactly,
right. And Trump is coming to their casino.
Well, he's in the bloody White House.
Right.
That is their casino.
Yes.
So
well,
go on.
No, I was going to say, I mean, I think too, I hadn't thought about it until you were talking, but as you know, we've talked about before, the idea of the praising or glorifying violent revolution. And again, glorifying violent revolution that's essentially caused by the CIA. I think that's entirely one strand of what's going on here. And I think it's not about like prepping us, you know, like this isn't predictive programming and soon there's going to be a coup against Trump.
No.
But I think it's about normalizing it. And also, we live in a society now where violence is, I mean, there's almost nothing shocking to people. You've got, again, it's like Richard Spencer gets punched in the mouth and we're supposed to think this is good. This is progress, you know, like violence is progress somehow. So I think it's also just sort of about normalizing the concept that, yeah, it happens, you know, and it's okay. It's all right. You know, you won't really be affected all that much. You know, because most of the people really affected in all this are government people. They're people that were part of the coup. You know, we're not seeing how the president expanding the Patriot Act and all these other things is, you know, what is that going to entail later? You know, I think they're kind of giving us the impression that, well, it's just the bad guys. And I guess ultimately Keane kind of got her wish. She's going to, you know, clean out, you know, drain the swamp of the CIA. You know, she's going to put all of her people in.
The problem is there's then what they're then left with a bunch of ambitious kids who've just been waiting for an opportunity like this to then take over, and
the bottom feeders of the swamp.
Yeah, they'll be just as bad as, if not worse. So,
well, now I wanted to throw this one at you too because so I kind of because I was sort of trying to figure out, like, what the hell is going on here? What are they trying to say with all of this? I think one, they're saying that the CIA, in the most basic sense, are the good guys. You know, like Saul and Kerry, especially because Saul and Kerry are being persecuted, they are the good guys. And they still represent the best of the CIA. And that the deep state, whatever that may be, those are the bad guys. And really, those are just a sort of loose coalition of military, CIA, and some, you know, senators and things that, and I guess, you know, the Alex Joneses of the world, who are horrible, you know, but they've sort of been vanquished. And I think another thing too that they might be going for, because I think that the CIA is they're pitching some crazy ideas to the writers here, but I think there's a rhyme and a reason to why they're doing all of this. But I think another thing too is that what happens at the end of this, classic, like in so much of the CIA-sponsored cinema, the CIA is portrayed as a weak organization that is at the mercy of the all-powerful president, who can destroy, anything at a moment's notice. Therefore, we need the CIA to check that power. I think on one level, it's that very basic idea that we've seen time and time again. Come on. So the president is going to start arresting CIA officials? Get the fuck out of here. They wouldn't, how would that even happen?
No, I know what you mean.
Is some process server going to show up at Langley and, hey, you got to come in?
Well, in theory, the FBI could turn up and start arresting them, but, any CIA officer worth their salt can avoid a tail by FBI agents. So, yeah. From a practical point of view, that whole kind of crackdown was ridiculous, really. But nonetheless, it's part of the story, and we kind of have to gloss over that. Well, we've only got a couple of minutes before the break, but what I take from this, in terms of the question you just asked, is that once again, this is that the CIA are being set up as the rational actors in a chaotic world. That this series reflected very well this fractured, fragmented political system we have now, where everyone's just screaming at each other, and it's like the strategy of tension in 3 dimensions, that you don't just have a polarized thing between 2 different camps, you have like 6 or 7 different camps all shooting at each other. They reflected that very well, and that's kind of the emotional core for a lot of the public, I guess, watching this show, is that that's what they're identifying with and seeing as, relevant to their own lives. But in amongst all that, the people who actually kind of made sense in what they were doing and saying were Carrie and Saul, the representatives of the sane, rational CIA, rather than Dara Dahl, who kind of represents not even just the CIA, though. So, whereas Saul and Carrie very much do. So I guess that's what they're going for, is once again this notion that it may be ugly, it may involve deceit, it may involve violence, it may involve all kinds of things that you would not like to see in the world, but are there necessarily and have to be, because the world is such a chaotic, dark, difficult place where there are people wielding secret power. And so therefore, aren't you glad that there are some rational actors in there? And in truth, I guess there must be. I just don't reckon there's that many in the CIA. I think that's the lie. It's not that there aren't rational actors on the world stage. I think there probably are some. Not that many, but some. And just like I say, I just don't think very many of them are for the CIA. So they're trying to say, yep, actually we're the rational ones. We're the ones that have not only the capability to deal with these kinds of things because we understand them and know how they work, but also the fortitude, the kind of spiritual fortitude to keep our minds when everyone else is losing theirs. I guess that's what's in it for the CIA in this season. Definitely. No, and I think, again, it takes a little bit of time to kind of parse that out and dissect it. But, again, just the why this is so worth watching is the complexity that they've put into this. And, me and you've been having this deep, ongoing political conversation about all this. But when you boil it all down, it is also classic CIA Hollywood propaganda, where you need us. We are necessary. The world is nasty, and we're nasty. And here we are at the break. Well, we'll return for a little bit with Tom Secker in the second hour. So stay tuned and stick right there.
what's up? Check this out.
The voice of the revolution. American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.
And I hope people support American Freedom Radio. And I hope people vote with their dollars and really understand the value of having American Freedom Radio. Because that's my family. If you love me at all, Jack Blood, support American Freedom Radio. Like, my family has literally disowned me. American Freedom Radio. Danny and Don and those guys, those are my actual family. So please support these guys, because they have all the technology, they have all these great things that they're going to do, but obviously they can't do it all by themselves. So not only would I like to see you support them, I'd like to see you retweet them and repost them and really get involved and get on the bandwagon, so to speak, on doing that do-it-yourself promotion, because they're a do-it-yourself radio network, and we just need that so much.
Did you know there are 3 million edible food plants on Earth, and none have the nutritional value of the hemp plant? HempUSA.org offers you hemp protein powder. It does not contain chemicals or THC, is non-GMO, and is 100% gluten-free. Hemp protein powder burns fat, builds muscle, contains 53% protein, and feeds the body the nutrients it needs. Call 888-910-4367 and see what our powder, seeds, and oil can do for you. Only at HempUSA.org. HempUSA.org introduces 3 brand new detox formulations of microplant powder. Brain Fuel for depression, bipolar disorders, and stress. Total Care, anti-cancer agent that cleans the liver and organs and increases memory. Rejuvenate, invigorates and heals the body, mind, and spirit. These products are your alternative to pharmaceuticals. Call 888-910-4367 and like us on Facebook. We ship worldwide. Only at HempUSA.org.
We all know that they're not telling us the truth. So stand up for your rights, demand the real medicine, and your right to use it and grow it. This is Rick Sensen, and you're listening to American Freedom Radio.
Yo, what's up? Check this out.
The voice of the revolution. American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.
What about show business? Show business, completely dishonest, corrupt, and full of shit, but in a nice way. Plenty of expensive drugs and perverted sex. If you're going to be full of shit, might as well enjoy your work. Then you have the media. Not just the news media, let's include them all. The media are almost literally exploding with bullshit, because they're located right at the crossroads of all the other bullshit. The media are made up of equal parts advertising, politics, business, public relations, and show business. These people are sitting right at bullshit junction. There's enough bullshit in the media for Texas to open a branch office. And you still have enough left over to start 2 law firms and a Christian bookstore.
What has American Freedom Radio ever done for us?
Provide us with free education?
Well, that's obviously effective, but apart from reversing the dumbing down of America...
All the information they provide is free?
What about the free podium for broadcast activists to speak from, man?
Exploiting commonplace corruption?
They help vulnerable people who don't have a voice?
Bringing light to important information nobody else does.
Or they never censor, hang up, or cut off their guests? Well, that's no fun, is it?
Oh, they created a fantastic alternative media source during an era of bad, manipulative, and infiltrated mainstream and alternative media shows and scam.
Okay, well, apart from the free education, free information, free podium for broadcast activists to speak from, exposing commonplace corruption, helping vulnerable people without a voice, bringing light to important information nobody else does, and creating a fantastic commercial-free alternative media source in a sea of bad, manipulative mainstream and alternative media shills and scum, what has American Freedom Radio ever done for us?
Donate to American Freedom Radio today.
No rules. No rules. No taboo topics. No taboo topics. No fear of doom. No fear of doom. We are American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio. Porkins Policy Radio, offering a unique perspective on everything. Geopolitics, culture creation, the reality of the world we live in. Coming to you live from New York City, your host, Pierce Redmond.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to Porkins Policy Radio. I am your host, Pierce Redmond. If you are joining us right now, we have been speaking with Tom Secker, discussing the season finale of Homeland. Lots of interesting stuff going on in the season that Tom and I were getting to. Tom, I don't know, any kind of like final thoughts on some of the things that we were talking about in the first hour? Because I do kind of want to move on to some connected type stories. But anything you wanted to say on just the season or anything like that?
Well, just to pick up on the theme that's run through all of our discussions in this season, that this seems to be something. Homeland is increasingly a show that is aimed at the critical class, if you like, at the commentariat, people who like discussing things. So, in as much as they are now playing into this whole dialogue where suddenly everyone realizes there's this thing we call the deep state, that it seems to be what they're doing is saying, firstly, the deep state is not some simple thing that you can just point at and say, that's the enemy and Trump's a hero. They seem to have kind of demolished that because they've made it this very realistic, multiform entity that they've referred to through several different terms and is essentially the intersection of several different major interests. That's what the deep state really is. In as much as they're playing into that discussion, that they're saying the CIA are the, I suppose, the Knights of Camelot. That's a slightly absurd analogy, but you know what I'm getting at, that in an aristocratic, elitist system, they are the noble ones. They are the ones who ultimately are for a reasonable world, I guess.
Yeah.
And that's bullshit.
Yeah.
I don't think there is a more chaos-inducing organization than the CIA. But, and of course they are even in this season, but nonetheless they've somehow come out of it with their reputation intact. And that, just from a propagandistic point of view, you gotta be a little impressed, that they could, like I say, wash all this dirty laundry in public in such a kind of spectacular, entertaining way, and still sort of come out of it as not the heroes, there are no heroes in this show, but as the ones that, if you were going to turn to someone and you were in the middle of all of this, you'd turn to them. I think that's the crux of this season, in as much as I can sum it up.
No, I completely agree, and I think it's again just the way that they're able to do this and take such a complex story and idea and, I don't know, weave in all of these different sort of factors and ideas and just the fact that they're, I don't know, it almost seems too like they're kind of moving away from it being like an espionage thriller, dealing with terrorism, and into a much
anymore, really.
No, and instead it's like a much more clever way of discussing just the world that we live in today. Not even just politics, but the social, the societal sort of things that are going on. It's fascinating that they're able to do that with a show that starts off with it's a soldier that's been turned by some Al-Qaeda operative, and he's going to blow up the vice president. All the way to where we are now is just a really amazing trajectory for Homeland. So, I'm very impressed on that. But I did want to...
Just quickly, like I suggested to you, when they recommissioned Homeland for season 6, they also recommissioned it for seasons 7 and 8. They will, at least as far as we know, they will be made. They only do that. They only usually recommission it for one further season. So I can only assume that Howard Gordon and Alex Ganser went to whoever the executives were and said, we're going to do something, going to do something different. We're going to move away from the thinking man's 24 or whatever it is that they pitched back when they originally Homeland, because of course they previously produced 24. And I think they said to them, give us another 3 seasons and we'll give you a show that, one, no one who watches it will be able to resist the temptation to talk about it, and 2, will do something different with TV than we've done before or that even anyone else has really even attempted before. And I think they sold them on that. I think the executives bought it, gave them 3 more seasons, and this is what we're going to get. I can only assume this president is going to survive until season 7 and that it's going to carry on telling this sort of a story. That we're not going to suddenly find ourselves in Afghanistan in the next season and it's back to usual. So, yeah. Also,
her new chief of staff, that actor he's a big. He used to be on Law and Order for years. There's no way he's just a bit, that's like an extras part, So they've definitely, they're casting things. They have a show in mind. So I mean, I'm super excited for the next couple of seasons, just to see where they go with all of this. And again, it's really interesting too that I think it also shows the evolution of the CIA and their relationship with Hollywood, where again, we've gone from a fairly kind of straightforward, this is a show about terrorism. It sort of comes off as critical of the establishment, critical of the CIA and those sorts of things. And as, then sort of move to sort of straight CIA propaganda all the way to where we are now, where, I mean, I don't know what to think anymore. And it's almost, and this sounds so horrible, but it's like almost like, I'm glad they're doing this. This is like a great sort of window into how this world works. And it's also kind of sad that, it takes an agency like the CIA to kind of help produce really great television. But moving away from that a little bit, we had to talk about the elephant in the room, and that is, of course, the breaking news, the revelation that Alex Jones is really just a performance artist. And apparently this is, his whole career as a truth teller and all this stuff has just been a lie. He's really just a performance artist. I know this is shocking for many out there, but this is true. This is what his lawyer has recently said. And this, of course, just, it's always fun to beat up on Alex Jones. I guess we should say, for the sake of decency, he's in a nasty custody battle with his ex-wife. We shouldn't make light of, his kids aren't, they're getting screwed with, obviously, and that's gotta suck. But, I can totally see why his ex-wife is saying, I don't want my kids around this guy. And I mean, I have no idea how he really is as a father. Obviously, as a person, he's pretty shitty. So, who knows what that means. But again, as we said, I mean, even Dara Dahl is capable of showing love and, humanizing. So who knows really. But, it's funny that this is the response. It's all a joke. It's all fake. It's all fake news. It's all an act. This isn't real. And again, it is a custody battle. His lawyer is using this to, so who knows? Lawyers will say whatever. They think they're going to win a case. But the fact that the Brett O'Keefe character is so obviously a performance artist on Homeland, and it is all a joke. He is orchestrating the fake news phenomenon. And then to have Alex Jones, who is, in recent years especially, and the last couple of months with this Trump thing, he's talking about, I'm going to die for Trump, and, this is the revolution we've been waiting for, and I'm telling you the God's honest truth, and blah, blah, blah. And, and how much Roger Stone and some of these other people relied on Donald Trump to promote, relied on Alex Jones to promote Trump to get, he is part of how he got elected. and then to say that it's all bullshit. And it's funny too. It's like another one of these like cons, like with Trump, where you see that, oh no, he's completely full of shit. He's shitting in your mouth and telling you it's a Sunday. With the NATO is good. China's not a currency manipulator. We got to bomb the Syrians. We're going to drop the most powerful missile ever in Afghanistan, just to, I guess, show how big our micro penises are. And the same thing then with Alex Jones. It's like, it's all a joke. This is all fake. None of what I said is real. And people are just kind of like, I don't know, ignoring it, pretending like it's not happening. What do you make of this, Tom?
Well, I've used the phrase before about Rorschach politics and this curious ability people have to just not see the things about the person that they want to believe in. And it is very, very strange that, I mean, you've got to say some credit to Alex Jones here because, yeah, okay, he's engaged in a somewhat ugly custody battle. His wife is arguing that he is actually the man that he pretends to be, or the man that we see on the screen on YouTube. He is arguing, oh no, that's all just an act, and I'm actually a, reasonable, nice guy, and therefore a worthy father and all of that. And you've got to say, clearly, his kids matter more to him than his reputation, because he's kind of fucked his reputation now. If this is what they're going to be arguing.
I'll give him that. Yeah.
So clearly those kids matter to him to some extent. I don't think this is just about some, trophy, battling his ex-wife or whatever. Because if it was just about that, they'd find some other way of doing it. Whereas this suggests he does actually care about those kids. So he's trying to do something, or his lawyers are. I also think there is a danger in dismissing Alex Jones as just an actor. I mean, he is. I'm not disputing that part of this story. But he is something more than that. Because he isn't just some kind of idiot spouting off a load of nonsense. He has also, and more so in the last couple of years, spread an awful lot of hate and fear and contributed very much to this hyper-tense political climate that we have now. And that's not trivial. If this was just a guy blathering on about black helicopters every week and, yeah, so what? Then that wouldn't have much consequence. But he is a noisy and successfully attention-seeking figure in a media climate that is increasingly contributing to this, both in terms of reflecting it and in terms of encouraging it. And so as a result, I think there is a slight danger in just dismissing Jones as an actor, or in not recognizing that, yes, just like the anchors on CNN, they are performing to some extent. They are playing a role in order to try and elicit a certain kind of reaction from their respective audiences. Yeah, Jones is certainly doing that in the exact same way and to a greater extent than they are. Because Jones has this whole thing of, ripping his shirt off and running around in tinfoil hats and so on.
Joker makeup.
Yeah. Well. That was quite a low point, I think.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
That really wasn't a clever idea.
You didn't think that one through.
No. But you know what I mean. Yes, it's true. He is performing. He will say things that he doesn't believe. He certainly isn't a truth teller in any meaningful sense of the word. But at the same time, he is more serious than just a clown on YouTube. And there are quite a lot of other clowns on YouTube who don't have any kind of real consequence like Alex Jones does. So I think we can draw a useful distinction there. It's going to be interesting seeing how this battle progresses, because I have a feeling there's going to be quite a lot of reporting on it. There's going to be a lot of light on this custody hearing.
Oh yeah, well, and of course, I mean,
the mechanism is, but whatever the progress of this legal situation is, I think it is going to be covered.
Oh yeah. Oh, and I mean, again, I'm not just trying to defend Alex Jones or anything, or go after the liberals, but it is kind of, you got like groups like Think Progress and some of these left-wing publications, basically just, prying apart his personal life. And it is like, ultimately it's about his kids, but they're just seeing this as an opportunity to kind of, put one in the back of Jones's head and, lay him out for good. So, it's funny to see, it's like if Alex Jones is doing that to someone's kids, a divorce, it's totally inappropriate. But no, it will be interesting because the mainstream media is, they're pouncing on this. They love this. They're having a field day writing these snarky articles about, how much of a phony he is. And I saw these Media Matters had this, YouTube clip that they put together of various clips of Jones saying all sorts of, talking about how he's always tells the truth and blah, blah, blah. They're loving it. So they will continue to it's funny too seeing Alex Jones is now going through this. Bill O'Reilly, who knows where he is, he's still on vacation. I don't think he's made a return yet. And the allegations against him are just mounting. It's interesting. Again, it seems like this reshuffling of the deck. In terms of media figures and, it's like we get, I don't know if there's a connection, the tinfoil hat wearing person inside of me wants to say there is, but again, Trump reversing everything that he believed in and Alex Jones conceivably being, I don't know how you return from that. He can't now go on and say, oh no, I was lying about that performance artist thing. I just wanted to get my kids back. I'm for real.
Well, no, of course, because if he does that, then he screws up the legal situation.
Yeah.
So he's kind of over a barrel.
No, and it's just interesting again to see that the media figure that did so much to promote Trump has been sort of neutralized as well. I don't know. It just, again, I don't know, synchronicity, happenstance, whatever you want to call it. It is fascinating that that's going on as well.
Well, it is. This is ultimately how, in particular intelligence services, but powerful organizations have always had agents of influence and spies, whether you call them an intelligence agency or not. That has kind of existed for thousands of years. And one of their, to pick up on another one of our favorite shows, Billions, Chuck, in that, who in the second season, I know you haven't watched it yet, but there's a similar kind of thing going on with the deep state in that. That they start to peel back a few of the layers when Chuck decides he's going to run for election. But he talks in the whole of the first season about playing three-dimensional chess and the ability to...
Yeah. There's a scene where he's playing chess.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's some more in the second season as well. But it's specifically the techniques of turning liabilities into assets and turning problems into things you can benefit from. That is essentially the skill of the agent of influence, the secret agent. And whether you're talking about doing that when you're engaged in some sort of hostile war between the DA's office and a hedge fund manager, or whether you're talking about the CIA and the White House, the same skills and the same tactics generally apply. That this is actually how it's somewhere between soft power and hard power. That this is how you wield influence. Because otherwise, what do you do when you actually, for some reason the people vote for a candidate that you can't deal with? You have to find a way to deal with them. You have to turn that liability into an asset. And we seem to have seen that happen with Trump. I would very much say now he's doing what they want him to. And he's going to carry on doing. From this point onwards, aside from saying stupid things on Twitter, Trump is going to behave himself. And
yeah, definitely.
You see the same with Homeland. You have a feeling you're going to see a kind of neutered Alex Jones come back on the other side of all this. He's not going away. He's not sort of, this isn't the end of Alex Jones. And God forbid. It's, he is still quite fun in his way.
Yeah.
And if nothing else, he makes for good headlines. So, but you know what I mean? He, in some ways, has now been turned from a liability into an asset. And you have to wonder what kind of shenanigans are going on behind the scenes, and is there a reshuffling of the deck, as you put it, and that he's kind of been turned, I don't know, from the Joker card into the three of clubs? Sorry, I'm taking this analogy too far.
No, that's good. Exactly. I was thinking he's more like that card that tells you the rules of how to play, when you get in the deck. Yeah. But no, it does feel like that. And it does, I I wonder too how that will trickle out, like will we see, because there's already some of these assholes, I've talked about before on the show, like Mike Cernovich and some of these, who are positioning themselves to be the new great leader of the alternative movement, and again, he's all about journalism. And he talks a great game about journalism, but of course plays fast and loose with the truth on his own website and the way he, conducts himself and his role as Alan Dershowitz's proxy. But, I don't know, it'll be interesting to see who kind of fills the void, of a neutered Alex Jones. It'll be interesting, I don't know, Paul Joseph Watson, maybe he jumps in but either way, I think it'll be fascinating to see, will someone kind of step in? And it's also, this is just making me think of a bunch of we got the, Milo gets, destroyed, Bill O'Reilly, Roger Ailes, now Alex Jones. I don't know, it'll be fascinating to see, what the next step is.
With most of those, they kind of did it to themselves. It was just, I know what you're saying. It is curious that in the last 2-3 months, we've seen a considerable shift in the media dynamic. And you have to wonder, there probably is some kind of deeper influence at play there. Exactly what they're trying to achieve, I don't know. But like you, I kind of share the suspicion that there is. But at the same time, all of these people were just waiting for someone to come along and pop that balloon. They'd kind of set themselves up to implode. But, yeah, I know what you're saying. There is something curious afoot. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. But, I mean, it'll be fascinating to see, is it, would this be the resurgence of, like, progressive media? Which is pretty much completely defunct. It doesn't exist. Unless you count things like The Intercept and Glenn Greenwald and that kind of crap. But, or will this
maybe they'll bring back the Zeitgeist movement.
Yeah. Well, one can only hope, right? I'm just picturing Alex Jones coming back and he's, I don't know, he's just sort of wearing like, maybe like a suit and glasses or some sort of, I'm picturing him coming back looking like a nerd and just being very quiet. And, like apologizing and stuff. But, I doubt that.
Rebrand himself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, rebrand himself. He'll become, like some sort of born again journalist and obsessed with the truth and he'll start talking about the things that really matter and something. I don't know. But,
try something. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I understand that. Oh no, go ahead, Tom.
Well, just that this is a kind of crossing the Rubicon moment that we've had the build-up in terms of the discussion about fake news, for example. Everyone lays everyone lays claim to truth and everyone accuses everyone else of fake news. That's how all these different sections interact with each other at the moment. And then possibly the greatest perpetrator of fake news in the history of journalism, though you could argue CNN. I suppose take your pick, really.
Or Hearst.
Well, if you want to go back, yeah. Sure. Bernays.
Right.
But, one of the most prominent figures in, like, the center of this whole argument, one of the guys who went around accusing everyone else of fake news and even, was promoting the whole Sandy Hook was fake, he is one of the people who opened that Pandora's box. And now all of those serpents that came wriggling out are very much coming back to bite him in the ass. Because nothing says fake news quite so much as your lawyer standing up in court saying, no, my client's just an actor. It's not a journalist.
It's all a joke. Yeah.
It's going to be very interesting, like you say, to see how he comes back from that and how he tries to. He's going to have to try rebranding himself somehow, particularly with Trump rebranding himself in such an obvious way that it's like, well, either Jones has got to go full balls to the wall pro-Trump, or he's now got to distance himself from all of that and try and sort of regain some credibility as, dissenter or whatever. So yeah, he's got some real, him and his sponsors and, all those people who make dodgy vitamin supplements, they've got some thinking to do. They've got to figure this shit out because they got to sell those water filters somehow.
Those male vitality pills. Well, I wonder too if this isn't also sort of like a message to some of the other proponents of fake news. Like, this can happen to anybody. If you really want to kind of go through, there's all stuff that we've said that's not true. You know what I mean? And look at Alex Jones. I mean, when put between a rock and a hard place, he's willing to admit that, yeah, I am fake to a degree. This is an act. It doesn't negate the influence that he's had, but, I don't know. It's like, do a lot of these other, right-wing, so-called alt-media personalities really want, their life to kind of be put under a microscope and start, picking apart all these little things? Cause everyone is so holier than thou lately. There's nothing, everybody loves to take the holier than thou person down a peg. That feels amazing. And,
it does. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That'll be fascinating. I know, Tom, I've been chewing your ear off and probably kept you too long. Quickly though, I do want to, say, please let the listeners know about, your new, little podcast miniseries you've been doing on Al-Qaeda and the history of Al-Qaeda. I was just listening, catching up on the last 2 episodes. And before you even get that, what is that movie that you were playing clips from? The one with, I want to say it's Allison Janney? It sounded like her. And then there's one with, Samuel L. Jackson? What were those from?
Oh, the Samuel L. Jackson one is Long Kiss Goodnight, that mid-90s movie with, Gina Davis, right. Samuel L. Jackson. That's the one about the blind sheikh and the World Trade Center bombing getting a CIA.
That's what that movie is about?
No, that's kind of at the heart of it. There is a plot to carry out a massive false flag attack in America in order to boost the security state, and this was made, 5 years before 9/11. So make of that what you will. The other movie, the one I played, the one in the Imad Salem episode was, that's an HBO TV movie called Path to Paradise, which is all about the World Trade Center bombing investigation. Right. And you can find that on YouTube. Long Kiss Goodnight and Path to Paradise. But the miniseries, it's not even going to be a miniseries. This is going to run to probably 10 episodes, to be honest, by the time I'm finished with it. But essentially, back when I was deeply into this topic, or this was like the main focus of my research before I got into this whole subject of state-sponsored entertainment media, I kind of wrote, maybe half, 2/3 wrote a book on the history of Al-Qaeda between its founding in 1988 as the Soviet-Afghan war falls apart and 9/11. Because in order to answer that question of kind of who are the potential suspects for that crime, or even just what is the war on terror, how do we actually interpret that? We have to understand what is Al-Qaeda. Because that's not something that a lot of people have focused on in a kind of determined or detailed way. You get these, in the first episode of the series, I broke it down into 4 kind of distinct interpretations of Al-Qaeda. You have the neocon version, where it's this, or was this massive international network with cells in dozens of countries capable of doing almost anything. A kind of renegade Islamist CIA, if you like. Then you have the sort of more decentralized version where that kind of exists, but it doesn't have any kind of command and control structure. And so what you actually have is a bunch of different people who all kind of believe the same things, but aren't actually acting together. Then you have the version where it's that, well, we keep using these people as strategic assets to destabilize governments, generally mess up countries, sort of just as kind of black ops special forces troops to wreak havoc, and that sooner or later that's going to blow back on us, and that it seems that our intelligence services just kind of don't care that that's going to happen, or they just accept it as a cost of doing business. And then you have the Gladio version, where substantial parts of this Al-Qaeda network are actually being controlled, or at least manipulated and directed, by our own intelligence services quite deliberately.
Tom, did I lose you?
Sorry, did you lose me for a mo?
Yeah. You're saying being controlled?
By our own intelligence services, and not just in terms of operations on foreign soil, but also in terms of domestic terrorist attacks. And so you have these 4 different interpretations, and so I wanted to go through essentially that history, 1988 to 2001 or so, of Al-Qaeda, look at a bunch of different terrorist attacks, a bunch of different major people, different figures in Al-Qaeda who are either intelligence agents or have very close proximity to intelligence agents, and ask those questions. How do we actually conceive of this? Let's test these 4 interpretations against as much information as I could dig up on this, and I spent several years looking at all of this before I even started to try and write a book. And so, yeah, I'm converting that book into a podcast series, is essentially what I'm doing. And so, yeah, so far we've been mostly looking at the World Trade Center bombing and events around that, but we're going to go on to the Bojinka plot in the Philippines, the embassy bombings, 9/11, maybe look at Luai Sakra, maybe look at Anwar al-Awlaki. Certainly, I'll be doing at least 1, probably 2 episodes on Ali Mohammed. So
Yeah.
there's a lot more coming. There are several more episodes in this series coming. So if you want to subscribe to Clandestine, go to spyculture.com. That's my site. And yeah, for the next couple of months, I guess, I'm going to be focusing on this.
Oh, well, I'm super excited. I think it's also, it's much needed. I think people have kind of forgotten about Al-Qaeda and all of the sort of, weird stuff and shenanigans going on in the background. You know, that's sort of like, you kind of talked about like some of the, like with the Imad Salem, these sort of false stories about him. These assertions that, oh, this is all a plot and blah, and how that sort of just that's permeated throughout the alt media, and it just sort of become accepted as fact when it's not true at all. And so much of the Al-Qaeda story, the official conspiracy theory story, has just sort of become accepted. And so I'm so excited to listen to the rest of those. But I will let you go, Tom. I know I've been chewing your ear off for too long. So thanks for joining me again, and we'll talk soon.
Well, sure. I mean, just before I go, I know a listener to both of our stuff, Jenny. She's probably listening because I reminded her that your show was on.
She said
tonight.
You're doing a great job with the new series.
Well, thank you. And it's also her birthday today. So just before I go, I want to wish Jenny a very, very, very happy birthday, because you're lovely and you're a long-term listener and supporter of both me and Pierce's work. So you're great, and thank you, and happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday, Jenny. I didn't know that. Yeah, excellent. Tom, thank you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. We'll talk soon.
Great. Okay. Well, that's so, I didn't know that. Happy birthday, Jenny. I will be sending out your journal, the copy of the journal to you, very soon. So, we'll figure that out. But, happy birthday, Jenny. Jenny is, for people who don't know, is a longtime listener and a big supporter of my work and of Tom's work. And Jenny is always in the chat room, at American Freedom Radio for my show. I feel like I don't get too many live listeners, but I always know that Jenny is listening, and that kind of makes it all, that makes it all possible. So thank you, Jenny, for everything that you do in supporting the work. And again, if you want to support Tom, definitely check out spyculture.com, become a subscriber to Tom's Patreon. And if you want to support me, then also you can become a subscriber to my Patreon, for as little as $1 a month. Great episode there with Tom. I had some other things I kind of wanted to bring up, but, it's always hard to get Tom to commit to 2 hours. But I understand. But I kind of wanted to, switch gears a little bit and kind of talk about something, a bit, kind of sad. People may or may not have seen this, but on April 12th, William Norman Gregg, passed away of a heart attack. And people, I hope, are familiar with Will Grigg and his work. He ran the Libertarian Institute that he co-founded with Sheldon Richman and Scott Horton. People, I hope, are familiar with them as well. And but Will also ran the freedominourtime.blogspot.com, which is the Pro Libertate blog, which is an amazing site. I encourage everybody to check it out and go through the archives of this. Fantastic work. Will was also did the Freedom Zealot podcast, and he was on the Scott Horton show many times. Great, really amazing, eloquent writer. It very sad to hear that he passed away from a heart attack. Will was not doing well apparently, and he had been in and out of the hospital the past couple of months, and unfortunately he just he passed away. But I just kind of wanted to a little bit of a tribute to Will Grigg, because he was this, as I said, this amazing writer. And listen, I didn't always agree with everything that he said and that he believed, but he was arguably one of the most eloquent, amazing writers coming from the libertarian viewpoint. And he was a true, really kind of stuck to his guns and wasn't the sort of phony, right-wing, pretend Republican libertarian that we see out there. Will was the real deal. And the Pro Libertate blog was the best source out there for daily coverage of police violence. He covered all sorts, from these, raids that these militarized police do, up in Idaho where he lived. He did amazing work on the Eric Garner case and talking about Eric Garner and the history of Garner's abuse by the police, and really amazing stuff. And like I said, daily. I mean, to the point where there were, he was some of the cases that he wrote about on Pro Libertate. I mean, he helped get people justice that had been abused by the police or attacked and things like that. Really amazing. Same thing, the Freedom Zealot. I didn't love everything that was on the podcast, but it was very well done. And I always enjoyed listening to Will. He just, speaks like a true intellectual in the best sort of a sense of that. He wasn't like an asshole. He wasn't snooty. He wasn't some sort of, the cliched sort of intellectual. He was like a real intellectual. He was a really fascinating guy. He was ran the John Birch Society for a while, and then left and was, completely disgusted with the internal politics of the John Birch Society. And he was very vocal about that. And he wrote, he had another blog that was just devoted, to ripping on, the Birch Society and the current CEO, who's, Art Thompson or something, Art something. Can't remember. And again, just the way he wrote about police corruption and police violence, and in a way, again, that you don't see much of anywhere else out there. Very interesting guy. He was I think part Irish, Cherokee, Basque, and something else, maybe Hawaiian. He didn't fit, and he was a, very devout Christian. He didn't fit into any of the kind of, categories that you would think of. But anyway, Will and his writing was very important for me when I was sort of having my, waking up moments and things. And, when I, became involved somewhat, with the libertarian, politics or libertarian philosophy, Will Grigg was somebody that, I had first listened to him on the Scott Horton show and was just so taken by how well he spoke, how, articulate he was, and how he could make philosophical ideas about libertarianism very tangible. And there aren't enough people that are able to articulate, that particular, the libertarian philosophy, but any kind of, a political philosophy, it's very easy to kind of get roped into utopian ideas or, talking philosophically about Marxism doesn't always really translate in a tangible sense if you're trying to get people interested in that. But I think that much of what Will was writing and things he was able to articulate that in a way that you don't really see much of. So, really tremendous. writer in that sense. And yeah, I just want to say one of the biggest disappointments in my life is never having interviewed Will. And he was somebody that I had, again, admired for, when I first got into all of this, and I, would check Pro Libertate daily, amazing stuff. And I freely admit I was, and still, was very starstruck. He was this that's the level of respect that he commanded. That's how high a regard I had for him. I was embarrassed to ask him to come on my radio show. Even now, I still was always, he was always, I have a big, list, in some of my notebooks of guests that I want to bring on and episode ideas. And Will he's always been at the top. And I don't know, I never got the nerve to send him an email, because I'm sure he would have come on. He may not have wanted to do 2 hours, but I'm sure he would have come on. He seemed like that sort of a person that, was very open and wanted to, talk about the types of subjects and things, particularly, this rampant police corruption and police violence, the militarization of the police. And of course too, I don't agree with everything he ever said. Can't imagine why he wanted to be with the John Birch Society, but the only reason that the John Birch Society came out opposed to the war in Afghanistan was because of Will Grigg and his influence within the John Birch Society. So it's one small feather in their cap. Again, because it's easy to say with Iraq because it was lies, but with Afghanistan, rah rah rah, we've got to go kill all the evil terrorists, and Will was able to do that. As I said, one of the biggest disappointments in my life, is never having had the chance to interview him and to chat with him and to get to know him. It just sucks. I don't know. I don't want to get, too emotional or too worked up about it, but that is a true loss, especially given the climate and the direction that we're moving as a country and as a larger society of people. We really, we're missing out, it's not having him around is a huge, huge blow to all of us. I said a similar thing when, Wayne Barrett, passed away a few months ago, I think, that, given the man who's in the White House and the way that Wayne Barrett really was able, was like a true muckraking journalist. It's a shame that we don't have him around. And the same for Will Grigg. He was a great, just a real great, a visionary type of person. I know I'm, having trouble articulating this right now, but no, it just sucks that he's not around, especially given the climate that we're in and the way that we're moving more and more towards the sort of horrifying world that Will talked about so much on his blog and on his podcast and things like that. It's very sad. And I just wanted to say too, there is if you can support Will out financially or his family, please do so. There's a GoFundMe that I will link up to in the show notes when I post this. But you can find it if you go on my Twitter account. I posted the link. Will, he had his 6 kids, and his wife Corinne, who I believe is also not doing so well health-wise. I can only imagine the medical bills and things that that inevitably get left behind when someone passes away. So if you can, please, there's no amount that's too small. Whatever you can do, check that out and send it over there. They've raised quite a bit of money, but it's 6 kids, bills, all those things. You forget how much, when someone passes away, what the aftermath of that, just the financial burden. Not to mention that, that causes depression and all sorts of there's so many repercussions when a loved one dies that you don't even think about. So if you can, please do, help them out financially, even if it's just like $1, $10. I mean, everything helps. And I just kind of want to put this out there. I don't want to, get too nasty or anything, but, to the fellow libertarians, put your money where your mouth is and help out, Will's family right now. Cause they really do need some help. And, I hear a lot of, especially these so-called libertarians out there that are, bitching about the state and it's all socialist and this and that and the other thing. Well, this is with the absence of the state, the absence of some of these safety nets. And I'm not debating whether they're good or bad or the other thing. But, this is, then put your money where your mouth is and help out this guy and his family because they need it right now. And, this is a great action for those who are, disgusted with the state, is showing that we don't need the state to support us because we will support each other. And I know there's this trend that, altruism is somehow like a 4-letter word in libertarians and no, the free market will the free market's not going to solve the fact that, Will is, survived by a wife and 6 kids and mounting medical bills. The free market is not going to, fix that right now, but we can all help out in small ways, to do this. So put your money where your mouth is if you are a true libertarian and, help out, Will right now. Cause there's so much of this garbage. But I don't want to, get dragged into something like that. And I also just wanted to say, one other thing on Will and another way you can help out. I don't really talk much, if at all. I can't really think or remember me talking about religion on the show, and because I don't really care, but to talk about it. But I do believe in a God, and Will definitely believed in God. And as I said, it was a devout Christian. So if you want to help out, please do say a prayer for him and his family. I know that sounds very weird coming from me. I don't talk about those sorts of things, but he would really appreciate it. He was a devout Christian man, and so is his family. And so if you can't help out financially, then, do say a prayer because, that would mean a lot to him. And I think that's what he probably would have wanted. So, that's another way, that you can, help out. So, for anyone out there, I don't know how many of my listeners are, I don't know, are religious or believe in God or believe in prayer or anything like that. But, it doesn't take more than a few minutes. It's just another way to show your support and whatnot. And, I didn't mean to end on such a sad, sort of note. And I hope people won't, don't let this get you down. Will was an amazing man and hopefully his legacy will live on. Hopefully, his website will always be there. And I hope people are, in the process of archiving it or something because it's an invaluable source. And, and we should be, celebrating, the things that he did. So I hope people, will do that. And, just remember, that, I don't know, life is precious. I know this is turning into somewhat of a different show, but, it's, life is precious. We shouldn't take, things for granted. And we should also kind of, reflect on the fact that, there's all these horrific things going on in all over the world. Here at home, we're so divided over everything from political ideology to sexuality and race and this and that. And these are all important things, and we should stand up for what's right and for our own rights and things. But don't lose sight of the fact that you are still alive. You still have your life. You still have, it's like a very old man saying, you still got your health. Be aware of that. I say this a lot on the show, just sort of unplugging from all this horrific shit out there and just, being around your family, being around your friends, interacting with people. Don't take all this stuff for granted. Don't just sort of go around, being angry and pissed off all the time and trolling people on the internet and wanting to start fights in comment sections and things like that. Remember that you've got this whole life ahead of you. There's this whole world out there, and don't take things for granted, and don't just sort of shit all over it. There's some amazing opportunities out there for you, and I hope that people appreciate what they have. It may not be much, and I don't have much, but I appreciate what I have, and I hope that everyone else does, because unfortunately, it can all be taken away, as it was for William Norman Grigg. He was only like 57, I think. It's young guy. Just to say that, I know this is sort of a depressing ending. I hope people, don't take more out of it. And please do, check out Will Grigg's, work, and if you can, help out his family too, because they need that. But that's enough on being, so kind of sad and depressing. After you finish listening to this, go out and, be with some people, go have fun, enjoy life, let it all, don't spend all your fucking time in front of the, computer screen, ranting and raving. I know I was really cursing a lot on this show, so my apologies to Ed Opperman, because I know, he doesn't curse on his show, and I've never really asked that if that's like an issue. I know it was in the past, but I hope it isn't, because I definitely curse a lot on the show, especially this one. But anyway, to kind of, wrap things up, end on a slightly happier note, I've got some really interesting shows planned, in the future. As I said, I'm dying to get Wendy Painting on the show. I just started reading Aberration in the Heartland of the Real, The Secret Lives of Timothy McVeigh. And this was a book that I got, through Patreon. This was a book I bought with money that from Patreon subscribers. So thank you all for subscribing. If you want to support me and the work that I do, and possibly get amazing guests on the show, such as Professor Wendy Painting, then you can always go to patreon.com/Pierce Redman, and you can become a subscriber for as little as $1 a month. Of course, if you subscribe at the $5 level, you get access to the bonus podcast, which I put out every month. I actually do. I do put it out every month. I know that, keeping the monthly promises has always been difficult for me, but I do put it out every month. We did a great one recently with Tom Secker on the 1986 movie Under Siege. So yeah, and everything else. And also, if you want to support me on through PayPal, that's fine as well. Love to get donations on that. But as I said, I'm loving Aberration in the Heartland of the Real. It's a mammoth book. First off, it's got to be looking 600, 700 pages. Lots of really amazing stuff in here. And as I mentioned earlier, tomorrow is the 22nd anniversary of the Oklahoma City bombing. So lots of unanswered questions when it comes to OKC. OKC was actually one of the before I was sort of into 9/11 research and those sorts of things, Oklahoma City was always one that fascinated me and was very much part of my political awakening or understanding of the world that we live in. More and more I find these big events, things, Oklahoma, even, like John Benet Ramsey case that we've spoken about, OJ, they're forgotten. So don't forget. Anyway, thank you, Danny, for putting on the music, and I will be talking to you next week.
news and information you can trust. This is American Freedom Radio. Freedom, American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.
And I hope people support American Freedom Radio. And I hope people vote with their dollars and really understand the value of having American Freedom Radio. Because that's my family. If you love me at all, Jack Blood, support American Freedom Radio. Like, my family has literally disowned me in American Freedom Radio. Danny and Don and those guys, those are my actual family. So please support these guys, because they have all the technology, they have all these great things that they're going to do, but obviously they can't do it all by themselves. So not only would I like to see you support them, I'd like to see you retweet them and repost them and really get involved and get on the bandwagon, so to speak, on doing that do-it-yourself promotion, because they're a do-it-yourself radio network, and we just need that so much.
Nutritious food is real body armor. It builds muscle, burns fat, improves digestion, and feeds the entire body the nutrients it needs. Did you know the U.S. government banned the hemp plant from growing in the United States and classified it as a Schedule I drug to hide it behind the marijuana plant? People have been confused about this plant for over 80 years, and many still don't know what hemp is. So now you know hemp is not marijuana, and marijuana is not hemp. They are different varieties of the same species. HempUSA.org wants the world to know these basic facts and to help people understand that hemp protein powder is the best kept health secret you need to know about. Remember, hemp protein powder contains 53% protein, is gluten-free, anti-inflammatory, non-GMO, and is loaded with nutrients. Call 888-910-4367, 888-910-4367, and see what our powder, seeds, and oil can do for you. Only at HempUSA.org.
We all know that they're not telling us the truth. So stand up for your rights, demand the real medicine, and your right to use it and grow it. This is Rick Sensen, and you're listening to American Freedom Radio.